There is a lot to go over and cover in this video, so let me just jump into it. Did the Detroit Lions just fool the entire NFL and a lot of fan bases out there? I think they have, and I'm going to explain why in this video. So let's just jump into it. But let me preface by saying I do think this Detroit Lions team is legitimate. I do think they are a very good football team. In fact, I think they're one of the better football teams in the league. Same thing with the Green Bay Packers. Well, why is that? Both are built very similarly. They've got very good foundations. They got very good GMs in Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell, and then very good GM in Green Bay with Brian Gutekunst and Matt LaFleur. Again, built very similar. I said at the beginning of the season, and I stand by it, this is going to be the best division in all of football, and the records show for that. You got the Lions 6-1, you got the Packers 6-2, you got the Vikings 5-2, and you got the Bears 4-3. All have winning records. But the thing that irritates the piss out of me is that the Packers are underdogs in Lambeau Field. I'm not understanding why. They said even if Jordan Love were to play, the Packers are still underdogs. If you listen to analysts out there, a lot of people talking, saying that this Detroit Lions team is the best team in all of football, despite what the power rankings are saying. Here are the power rankings. You got the Chiefs 7-0. They are number one, and until somebody dethrones them, they are number one. Until somebody can take Patrick Mahomes from the top of the hill down, he is, and they are number one in the league. You got the Lions falling just behind them. Number two, again, you listen to analysts out there. They say they've got the best coach in Dan Campbell. They say they've got the MVP of the league in Jared Goff. They say they've got the best offense in the league, the best running back duo, all of that stuff. I'm going to give you statistically reasons why I think the Packers are better on paper, better statistically. And I think this Packer team is, quite frankly, a better team than the Detroit Lions. Now, you can make the argument they're built so similar that they're neck and neck. Hence why I think this NFC North race is going to be just so close. But why on earth are the Packers underdogs at Lambeau Field? You mean to tell me that the Packers are that much worse than the Detroit Lions? Now, the Packers on the power rankings are number 4 here. So you mean to tell me there's that big of a buffer that even though Detroit is going on the road at Lambeau Field, one of the tougher places to play in the league, they're still favored by 4 points? How is that even possible? Okay, so let's take a look at so here's what Sports Illustrated said. They said, despite being at home, the Packers are already set as 4-point underdogs. Again, that's even prefacing, even if Jordan Love were to go, they're still holding to the fact that the Lions are going to maintain that winning streak on the road. You take a look at Detroit media, and of course, this is SB Nation, Pride of Detroit, so it doesn't surprise me, but it says the Detroit Lions are the best team in football by a big margin. Really? By a big margin? You take a look at, it says right here, ESPN is giving the Packers a 39.2% chance to win this game at home. Again, Jordan Love, it hasn't been ruled out, so this is even assuming if Jordan Love were to be out there playing, a healthy Jordan Love, they're saying that the Packers are still underdogs at Lambeau Field. I'm not understanding it. I'm not seeing it. So let's take a look at the numbers. So when we start talking about how everybody's saying that this Detroit Lions team has the best offense in football, well, let's take a look at the numbers on offense. Okay, so total yards per game, the Packers are 5th, the Lions are 6th. Okay, and this is yards per game because the Lions have had a bye week. The Packers haven't had a bye week, so we're not going to go off of total yards. We're going to go off yards per game. Same thing with passing yards per game. You take a look at the numbers there. You got the Packers 9th ranked, the Lions 11th ranked. Okay, what about rushing? Okay, so they say this is the best rushing backfield in the league. Well, let's take a look at the rushing yards. You've got total rushing yards per game. You got the Packers ranked 5th and the Lions ranked 6th. What about points per game? Well, the Lions are ahead of the Packers there. The Lions are number 1 in the league, and the Packers are 6th. So the Lions are obviously translating some of those red zone appointments into touchdowns, which is key, right? So let's take a look defensively. Defensively, where do the Packers stack up against the Lions? Well, total yards allowed per game, the Packers are 15th, and you got the Lions at 20th. What about passing yards allowed per game? You got the Packers at 19, and Detroit Lions, one of the worst in the league, at 27. What about rushing yards allowed per game? The Packers are 10th, the Lions are 5th. Okay, so they have the Packers there. What about points per game? You got the Lions at 8, the Packers at 11, so they've got the neck up there. What about sacks? Let's take a look at sacks per game. You got Packers at 8, and the Lions at 12. Now, mind you, the Packers do have one more game under their belt, so take that stat for what it's worth. But even takeaways, same thing there. But takeaways, the Packers are 4 up on the Lions. You've got the Packers 1, the Lions tied for number 2. Same thing with the Vikings. They're tied at number 2 with 15 takeaways, but the Packers have 19 takeaways. So even statistically on paper, I'm not understanding what the hype is. I get that this Detroit Lions team is very good. I'm not taking that away from them, but how are they favored? Okay, so even let's talk about Josh Jacobs for a hot second, because they may, even if Jordan Love plays, they're going to have to rely heavily on Josh Jacobs in that game. Well, he ranks second in the NFL in yards after contact, just behind Derrick Henry, which means he's breaking some tackles. He's getting the yards there. He has 510 yards after contact, which is huge. That's a big stat out there for him. So let's take a look at who the Lions have played and how they ranked and stacked up. Okay, so they started the season against the Rams. Now, there were some injuries in that game, but be that as it may, the Lions played well, and that was a tough game against Matthew Stafford. Of course, you've got that rivalry that's there, and the Lions won by less than a touchdown. Then they lost by less than a touchdown to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Then they won by 1 touchdown margin against the Arizona Cardinals, who the Packers handled very handily. Then you've got the Seahawks. Now, that game was a little bit closer than the score. It was a 42-29 victory for the Lions. It is again, that was a little bit closer of a game than what the score dictates, but they did handle the Dallas Cowboys. They manhandled them 47-9. The Lions looked really good in that contest. Then they barely beat the Vikings 31-29. I think that's what we lost to the Vikings by. And then they manhandled the Tennessee Titans. So I think this is coming off the hype of that win, that the Lions put up 52 points on a terrible Titans team. Maybe that's the reason why they're favorites. So let's take a look at that Lions game here a second. You got the Detroit Lions winning 52-14. Now, we allowed 14 points against the Titans when we played them as well, but we didn't have 52 points. So you take a look at the numbers, and where did Jared Goff stack up? He was 12 of 15, 85 yards, under 100 yards passing. So how on earth did they get 52 points? Well, they had 1 defensive touchdown. I think they had almost 200 yards return of special teams, and they had a touchdown special teams. So you even look at Jahmyr Gibbs. He had 127 yards, very good running. But how did Pollard do? Pollard almost had 100 yards. So that's very good news for Josh Jacobs, because I think Jacobs is a lot better than Pollard. So I think he's going to have very good success against that Detroit Lion front. What about the passing game? You had Calvin Ridley, the only receiver that's there. They traded away DeAndre Hopkins. He had 143 yards receiving. Like, to me, that's not good defense right there. But you had Mason Rudolph as quarterback. Okay, so they're just going through their Rolodex, trying to find a quarterback that works in Tennessee. 22 of 38, 266 yards, 2 picks in that game. Now, I'm not taking anything away from the Detroit Lions. Now, don't hear me wrong when I say this, but this Detroit Lions team, I don't think is that much better than the Green Bay Packers, that they are favored at Lambeau Field. I don't understand it. Leave your comments. Let me know your thoughts. And as always, go Pack, go.